Hello, my name is Whitney and I am so happy to have you here. Today I am going to be doing kind of a quarterly wrap-up. I'm just going to be wrapping up all of the books that I read in the first 3 months of 2021. I just find this a little easier and more fun to do than monthly wrap-ups just because my reading can vary so much month to month. So yeah, that is what I'm going to be doing. Let's get into it, because I have some books to talk about. So in the first 3 months of 2021, I have read 13 books, which isn't my best, but isn't my worst either. I'm pretty happy with that considering how busy I was and I had some things going on. So let's get into what I read. So the first book that I finished in 2021 is Normal People by Sally Rooney. This follows two characters, Connell and Marianne, who grew up together in a small town, and it's kind of just them literally growing up together. Starts off when they're younger and follows them into their adult years. They kind of have an on-again, off-again relationship, a very strange kind of, not really a will they, won't they, because they will, but it's more like it's very up and down, and their relationship is so up and down, and the way they act towards each other is. As the title suggests, it kind of is just like a normal relationship and two normal people trying to figure out how to do things. If this sticker's bothering you, it's bothering me too. I'm sorry. But yeah, I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I thought the writing was very, very beautiful. I know Sally Rooney's writing can be kind of divisive. I think you either love it or it's not for you. I personally love it. I prefer very, very character-driven books, and this definitely was that. Like, if you're looking for plot, you're not really going to find it in this book. It is very just all about the characters. I wasn't a huge fan of the ending. If you've read it, let me know if you liked the ending, because I was a little let down. But overall, I really, really enjoyed this. I liked the writing, and I liked the characters and how they were kind of like, nothing was black and white. It was very gray. So like, they weren't good people and they weren't bad people. They were normal people. I really want to pick up more of Sally Rooney's books. I know Conversations with Friends is very, very well loved, so I will definitely be picking that one up in the future. I'll put this right here. Ooh, right here with my little raccoon plant. Beautiful. Okay, the next book I read, I listened to as an audiobook, and that was Black Girl Unlimited by Echo Brown. This, oh my gosh, is going to be in my top books of 2021, 100%, already calling it. This was so, so beautiful. So this is a memoir, I believe. It's kind of hard to describe because it is about Echo's real life. However, there is kind of like a magical realism twist to it, which is something that I've never read in a memoir, and I absolutely loved it. There is a lot of use of metaphor to describe trauma. There's like she describes it as like a black veil that she can see over other people when they've experienced trauma. And when they're like overcome by it, she describes herself and her family as wizards, which is a beautiful, beautiful metaphor for like being a strong person who's overcome like so many hardships, and it's just about her life and the struggles that she's had, and the hardships of growing up as a black woman in America. And I highly recommend that everybody reads this book. There are some pretty severe trigger warnings for this, so I would definitely look those up if you have anything that kind of triggers you, because there's a lot in this book, but it's so beautiful, and I highly, highly recommend it. The next book I read was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And I have some thoughts. I did not like this at all. What did I give it? I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. I read this for an episode of my podcast that I host with my friends Rachel and Gabe called Blanket Fort Books. I will have all the info. It's always linked in the description. And I will link this episode specifically where we discuss this book. And I'm really disappointed because I was really looking forward to this book. This was Rachel's pick. However, this was one that I had already owned, so I already had previous interest in this, and I really did not enjoy it. It was very preachy, I found. So it's kind of about a young boy who is traveling to like find some treasure, and he meets some people along the way, and it's kind of, I don't even know how to describe this book. When I was looking it up on Goodreads after I had read it, I saw that it was listed in the self-help category, which I didn't realize, so maybe that was on me, but it was very like pretentious and preachy and like kind of shoving advice down your throat when I didn't really want it. I thought this was just going to be like a well-written, beautiful story, but I also didn't really like the writing. I might be mistaken, but I believe this is a translated work, so it might have something to do with that. But I just hated it. There was like some mistreatment of women that I didn't like. I don't recommend this, and I'm sad because so many people love it, and I really thought that this was a classic that I needed to read, but I think I'm gonna unhaul this, so this was a no from me. I didn't read very many physical books that I own, so I'm just gonna line them up here so you can see them. Beautiful. The next book that I read, I also read for the podcast, so that episode will be linked below as well. And this one was Verity by Colleen Hoover. So, if you've been on BookTube for a while, you definitely know Colleen Hoover. She's a very well-known like new adult romance author, and I have read a couple books of hers in the past, notably Ugly Love, which is what I remember, and I still hate. I remember that being such a toxic romance and so like, ugh, just not good at all. And this book I did not have the highest hopes for just because I have experience with Colleen Hoover, and this just didn't seem like something I would have picked up if not for the podcast. I ended up giving it 2.5 stars out of 5, which, you know, isn't the worst. It's like an average middle of the road rating. But this follows a ghostwriter who gets hired to continue writing a book series for an author, Verity, who has been in an accident and is no longer like conscious and able to write it. And it's definitely a thriller, and there are some thriller aspects, but it's also a romance between her and Verity's husband, and she's living in it's so weird. So she's living in the house with Verity, who is essentially like in a coma. She's not in a coma, but she's disabled and unable to move or speak. She's living there with Verity and her husband, who's taking care of her. And then her and the husband kind of fall in love. It's very uncomfortable, very strange. I think it's a bit problematic for, like, I think it's a bit ableist, and it has a problematic stereotype regarding disability. That's kind of how I interpreted it. I'm not personally physically disabled, so I don't know, but it just gave me very uncomfy feelings. So that was 2 out of 5. It was a fun read and definitely really fun to discuss, just because I feel like it was just kind of silly. It kind of feels like one of those books that I would have read in middle school and loved like during my Twilight phase. That's how I interpreted that. Okay, then I read a very popular book that I absolutely loved, and that was Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I cannot get enough of Talia Hibbert. She's 100% my favorite romance author. I read her entire Ravenswood series, which is definitely not as popular as... Oh, my cat's in a bag. Okay. If you hear weird noises, my cat is fully in a bag over there. It's fine. So yeah, as I was saying, Ravenswood is like definitely not as hyped as Chloe Brown or like the Brown Sisters trilogy at all, and it makes me sad because that series was so incredible. Oh, anyway, highly recommend that, but that's not what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about Chloe Brown, which I loved. This is a romance following her and the superintendent of her apartment building, and she is disabled. She has fibromyalgia, so she is trying to kind of put herself out there and do things that she wouldn't normally do to get a life. And she enlists the help of her superintendent to help her complete this list, and it's just so cute and so steamy, and I highly recommend this one. I gave it 4 to 5 stars. Really, really love it. I'm currently reading the companion, so it's a great time. Highly recommend. Then I read something kind of out of the ordinary for me, and that was a poetry collection by a musician. So I read Violet Bent Backwards Over the Grass by Lana Del Rey. I listened to the audiobook for this, and I have some thoughts. So first of all, I am aware that Lana Del Rey has been increasingly more problematic as of late. I do not support any of her actions or the way that she chooses to handle criticism. That being said, I read this before I was kind of aware of all of that, and I don't really support this book in any way either. This is the only time I'm going to talk about it on my channel. I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought the poems were very beautiful, if a little pretentious. It was kind of like a love story to Los Angeles, and I did hear that this was only supposed to be published in small indie bookstores in LA, so I guess that makes sense. My main issue that I had with this was mainly with the audiobook, and that was that for some of the poems, there is like really loud music in the background that was kind of like overshadowing the poems, and I have some sensory issues, so when it comes to like music and speaking at the same time, I can't like differentiate between those two, so it was really, really distracting. So I think that is like a big accessibility issue. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has this issue. For one of the poems, I think it was the last one, there was like talking in the background, excuse me, over the poem, and I really, really hated that. So anyway, not recommending this book, not recommending Lana Del Rey. I read it, those are my thoughts. Okay, the next book I read, I hated. Again, I feel like I'm talking about some books I really didn't like. I had some bad luck in the beginning of the year, and that was Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. I definitely need a bigger memory card because this one fills up so fast. Anyway, as I was saying, the next book I read was Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. I hated this book, and I am really sad because it was such an anticipated read for me. I would have predicted that I gave this book 5 stars, but I did not, and I'm really sad about it. Where do I even begin? So I love dark academia, and I love themes of school and like spooky atmospheres and stuff, but this was so poorly done in my opinion. I know people either love it or hate it. I'm definitely on the more hate it side of this, but I did give it 2.5 stars, so I mean it's not like I gave it like half a star or anything. But this book felt so repetitive. Like, how do I even tell you what this is about? It's like, it's following like a special school that only a select amount of people get into, and you have to apply, and it's very like elite, but not really on the basis of like grades or anything. It's more like only specific people who have like endured specific things get in, if that makes sense. And there is some sort of like hidden like research that they're doing that the main character is kind of suspicious about. And yeah, this felt like it was the same thing over and over and over again. Like this could have been like a 50-page novella for all the information we got. It was so repetitive, and when we actually got some like actual substance, it just was lackluster. It fell flat for me. And like I said, I love character-driven novels, but I didn't even feel for any of the characters because of the way it was written. So it's not even like I appreciated the characters or the character development, because I didn't feel like there was any there. So that's my opinion on Catherine House. I hated it. It definitely put me into a reading slump, unfortunately. So to get out of my reading slump, I reread one of my favorite books, and that is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I am not going to spend too much time on this because I'm sure you have heard about 1,000 people talk about this book already over the last couple of years. Oh, my copy is so damaged. I like slept on it by accident, so it's like, oh. Anyway, that's fine. This is so cute. This follows the son of the first female president of the United States and the Prince of England and their relationship, and it's just so beautiful, so cute. Definitely pulled me out of my reading slump, and such a beautiful romance. One of my all-time favorite romances. Highly, highly recommend this if you have been living under a rock and haven't read it yet. This was my second time, and I feel like this is a book that I'm gonna read like once a year at least. Put that right here. Actually, let's cover the Alchemist because we don't need to see her anymore. There we go. Okay, then we read a couple of audiobooks. The first one was Love Boat Taipei by Abigail Hing Wen. What did I give this one? Oh, I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. So this follows a girl named Ever who is sent to Taiwan to study Mandarin for the summer when she really doesn't want to go. She really just wants to be a dancer, but her parents don't approve of that. They want her to be a doctor, I think. Yeah. So they send her overseas, which is a big deal for them because they don't have a ton of money for her to learn Mandarin, and she is really like unappreciative of their efforts because it's not what she wants to do at all. But she ends up meeting some friends and a boy and being able to dance and having a good time, and I really liked this one. I found it very fast-paced. However, there were some themes of slut shaming, body shaming, girl hate, which is something I really don't like to read about, especially in YA contemporary, because I feel like the demographic it's targeted at doesn't need any more of that nonsense. So yeah, that was kind of disappointing, but I really liked this. I listened to the audiobook in like a day or two, like it was super quick, very easy listening, but just keep in mind girl hate and some slut shaming and that kind of stuff. The next book I read was one that I really enjoyed, and that was The One by John Mars. This book is about a sort of dating app that kind of matches you on the love of your life, your soulmate, based on your DNA. So it's kind of like a 23andMe kit, but then they match you with like your one person in the entire world that is matched for you based on your DNA. This follows multiple different perspectives that all intertwine in a really interesting and fun way. One of my personal favorite parts of this book was a serial killer who was matched with a cop, and that was exactly how you'd expect. If the best way to describe this was like an extra long and extra juicy episode of Black Mirror. This was so good. 4 to 5 stars. No, 4.5 out of 5 stars. My only qualm with it was that I felt like it needed a better wrapping up. The ending was a little bit unsatisfactory, but overall, really loved this one and highly recommend it. Next, I read a book that like absolutely swept me away, and that was and that was From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I'm sure you've been hearing about this all over BookTube as well. This is a fantasy romance. So this follows our main character, Poppy, who is the maiden. So she lives a life of solidarity, never to be touched, looked at, spoken to, has a ton of rules, constantly has to hide her face, and she is told that the future of basically all of the people around her kind of depend on her ascension, which is when you become kind of like godlike, if that makes sense. Yeah, being found worthy by the gods and then being immortal, essentially. And she gets a new guard named Hawk, who is very different from her other guards and very sexy, and you know, things happen between Poppy and Hawk. There's a big twist in here that I didn't really see coming that I really enjoyed. I think I gave this 4 to 5 stars. What did I give this one? 4.5 out of 5 stars. I wrote in my review that a lot of the writing felt like it was kind of telling you instead of showing you, if that makes sense. And there were some things in here that were a bit predictable, but overall I really loved this. This is a gift from my dear friend April. I love you, April. Thank you for sending this to me. I loved it, and I still need to read the sequel. I might do that as soon as possible because I really liked this. So the next one I listened to as an audiobook is A Phoenix First Must Burn, edited by Patrice Caldwell. So this is an anthology of short stories that all follow a black main character, and they are all like science fiction, fantasy, speculative fiction. And this was so good. I usually have an issue with short stories because I find like just when I'm getting into the story, suddenly we're into a new one, and I just find it, I don't know, my brain doesn't usually love them, but this one just hit a chord. This was really beautiful. What did I rank it? 4 out of 5 stars. So some of the stories I was like obsessed with and would have read like 6-book series about, and then some of them I was just kind of on, which I think is how it always goes with anthologies, but I highly recommend this. Even if you're not really into short stories. I'm not, and I loved it, so I really recommend. And the very last book that I read in the first 3 months of 2021 is We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. I buddy read this with my friend Paige from Pages with Paige. Hi, love you. I gave this book 4 stars, and I only read this like a month ago, but I really can't remember anything that happened. I think that might be a really bad sign, especially considering it's so short, and this is like pretty much the last book I read. I'm really struggling. I know it's a girl who kind of goes through a tragedy. I'm having issues. This is a girl who kind of runs away to school after her grandfather dies, I think, who she lives with, and she kind of like cuts off her best friend and doesn't talk to anyone and just leaves and spends time by herself. And I think she just had a really hard time dealing with that death, and then a lot of things kind of come to light after her grandfather dies. There's some secrets that he was hiding from her that really affected her and really hurt her. I do remember the writing was super beautiful, so I don't think it's on the book for not really remembering much. I think it's on me, but anyway, I gave it 4 stars. I really liked it when I read it. I know Paige really liked it too, so I recommend this. You can kind of see it there. That is all that I read in the first 3 months of the year. It's not that much, but at the same time, you know, I think I did pretty good. I'm pretty happy with what I read. Let me know your thoughts on any of the books that I read, if you felt the same way, if you think there are any books that I would like based on the ones that I liked here. Let me know your thoughts and feelings and opinions and life story in the comments below. Leave me a heart emoji if you want to comment something but don't know what to comment, and yeah, I will see you in another 3 months to do another wrap up for the next set of books I'm going to read. But yes, thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!